Okay, so welcome to Retech, and today it's a happy birthday to a very special machine, and that machine is 40 years old as of March this year in 2021, and that machine is the Sinclair ZX81. It's now 40 years old. And it's a machine that's famous and infamous all in one package, because it's famous for being a machine that was available for less than £100. It kind of retailed at around about the £70 mark in 1981, and it was also infamous for the shortcuts that was taking to make this machine be out at that price point. It was an improvement on the ZX80, and it was a incremental improvement, really, to be honest. It wasn't, you know, an all-out different machine, but basically you could take the ROM out of this and it would work in either machine, the 80 or the 81, and it wasn't a bad overall machine. It got a lot of criticism because of the flat membrane keyboard, but you must remember that at the time, if you wanted to produce a computer with a proper keyboard, a typewriter style BBC Micro, very good quality keyboard, it would cost you more than it would have cost to buy this entire machine, this little wedge-shaped package. Now, Clive Sinclair knew that it didn't have to have the most functions. It didn't have to be all singing, all dancing. It didn't have color. It didn't have sound, but he knew it would sell. He knew at that price point the machine would move off the shave people and insight into computing and computers. It was, for many, their first kind of foray into the technological world of the time, because you've got to remember that computers at the time cost 5, 6 or 7 times plus the amount that the ZX81 cost. And the ZX81 was okay for as a machine goes. It would do what most people wanted to do at the time: learn about computers. You could learn how to program in BASIC, you could learn how to structure your programs, how to use the language. You would learn how to even play 1K chess. On one of these, believe it or not, 1K, and you had an entire chess package all rolled up into something that is not much bigger than an email, a modern day email. And it was a miracle that he was able to do it, and that again was down to Sinclair's single-mindedness on price. And because of that, he was able to package a lot of the ICs into a single uncommitted logic array, which really don't get used today, but at the time it was groundbreaking. Acorn also followed it up by using a ULA in their Electron, and kind of again, it was Chris Curry and Clive Sinclair had very similar ideas on how to build a machine, but Sinclair's complete doctrine was to get the price as low as possible by whatever means possible, and that's what made this machine both famous and infamous. Now, the little Sinclair machine, which is 40 years old as of the 5th of March 2021, found its way into a lot of homes. About 1.5 million of these little machines were sold, and most people realized that once they bought the machine, other than playing 1K chess and, you know, the odd 1K game that was out there, and once you've learned how to fill half a screen with programs and characters, you'd run out of memory, and it was quite evident that you'd need something a little bit more powerful or to expand this little machine. And most people would then go out and buy one of these, a 16K RAM pack, and it was possibly one of the most expensive 16K bits of memory you would ever buy in reality. So £49 or thereabouts, and it would plug into the back of the machine. This one's nice and tight, and it would actually sit on the desk as such, but they had a tendency to wobble because the connection wasn't brilliant, and most people used double-sided tape or something similar and didn't wobble. Okay, so you know, there were a lot of ways around it, but this was inventing or reinventing the wheel, because at the end of the day, most computers out there cost 5+ times more than this, so people were willing to put up with its shortcomings to have an experience of having a home computer or a computing device in their homes, or even just to play around with this newfangled technology at the time. So yeah, the ZX81 had its shortcomings, but it also had some massive plus points. It was a catalyst. It was a catalyst to get people into computers. It was a catalyst to get people into technology, and a lot of people from this era are still in the technology field now, being IT specialists, programmers, networking people, and so on. So it kick-started a lot of people's careers and interest in technology, basically. So really, it did its job. It got the man in the street into computing and able to afford one of these. But we're also going to wish it and Clive Sinclair a happy 40th ZX81 birthday. So let's have a look at the specs on this machine and what makes this machine tick. And it's quite surprising when you look inside of one of these as to how little and how manual the entire motherboard was. There was no computer generated circuitry, there was no computer generated boards, there was no computer generated tracks. It was on the issue one, like this machine, it was all hand laid down and basically etched in a bath once it had all been laid down. Okay, so the Sinclair ZX81 was 1K. It was 1K of memory in its base form. It was run on a Z80 processor running at 3.25 megahertz. It was limited because it had no graphics display, so to speak of. It was all software generated, and Sinclair introduced a slow mode, which sounds like it's a backward step, but what it did was enable the graphics and the computations to run at the same time, so it would stop the flickering. But it also had a fast mode, and the fast mode was basically where the ZX81 left off. So it was an improvement over the ZX80. It used the same style of motherboard, but the case was much improved, designed by the late great Rick Dickinson, who was an industrial designer and basically designed a lot of the Sinclair products. And you can tell by the colouring and the style that it was definitely a Sinclair product. And at the end of the day, that's at the time was what it was all about. It was about finding a niche in the market, finding your own way, putting your mark on the technology world, which Clive Sinclair certainly did with this little machine. Now, if we look inside the board, you can actually see it's hand drawn. This is an issue 1 board. It's all hand drawn. The board itself is quite small. You only have 4 chips. You have a ULA, a CPU, a basic ROM, and also a memory chip, and that is it. On some US market models you had 2K of memory, so in some models you had an extra memory chip, but basically most of the machines that were sold outside of the US had 4 chips on the board, and even a lot of the USA machines had a single 2K memory chip as well. So, you know, basically there was very few components on this board and there's very little to go wrong. And also with the keyboard being membrane, there was also a lot less to go wrong than most other machines, which is probably why they've survived so well up until today. What could the ZX81 do? Well, compared to most other machines in its 1K form without the RAM pack, not a massive amount. You could do some basic programming on the machine. You could also start using it as a glorified calculator. You could also use it as a controller, because there were a lot of projects out there which used the edge connector to turn stepper motors on and off and so forth. And you could then expand it and use it for a lot of other things, including the little ZX printer, the little Spark printer, which unfortunately the the actual markings on the foil on the aluminium would rub off after a while, so it wasn't permanent. But again, it was quite a cheap little printer and it kind of matched the ZX81. You could also do your finances on it. If you had an expanded machine, you could then play quite a few little 16K games, which some of them were actually quite good. And you could also use it as a stepping stone to maybe the ZX Spectrum or another more capable machine. But I very much doubt his claims of you could be able to run a power station off of this was quite 100% true. But at the end of the day though, it was marketing, and I am sure if you could find a niche for it in a power station, somebody would have at the time, because these were very popular as hobbyists machines. They were kind of very popular as small controllers, almost at kind of a point where your Arduino is today. So it's basically an Arduino with a keyboard, really. So yeah, that's what the ZX81 possibly could have done and what it actually did do. So it was very popular within projects, magazines, so Maplin Electronics, but at the end of the day it was a starter machine, and this was my very first computer, was a ZX81. Not this model, this is one I've actually got to repair, but in the previous video we've seen a boxed ZX81 which has been and went everywhere with me when I was a kid. So it doesn't deserve the derision that it gets from the likes of Commodore designer Bill Hurd and quite a lot of other people out there, because without one of these at such a low price point, I doubt there'd be very many children who would have got onto the computing ladder. And this and its bigger brother, the ZX Spectrum, again at a very low price point, enabled children and anybody who was interested in computers to have one and learn about them. So yes, the ZX81 was not perfect. It wasn't the ultimate home machine for most users. It wasn't the fastest machine. It wasn't even colourful, or it didn't make any noise whatsoever, but it enabled people to get a start in the IT world, and that is what this machine was all about. So happy birthday to the ZX81, 40 years old. So thanks for watching, thanks for joining me in this celebration of the ZX81, and I hope to see you soon. Please subscribe and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye bye.